Ambassador Quibbleton's pen tapped against the polished obsidian desk of the Galactic Council chamber. 4 precise taps, pause. 4 precise taps, pause. The rhythm soothed him. Routine was sacred. Routine was the glue of civilization. Across the chamber, a shimmering scroll of policy updates was unrolling in midair, slowly and unnecessarily. The bureaucrats from the Shal Confederacy were arguing over the color classification of leisure permits on moon colonies. Ambassador Quibbleton of the Zarenth Corps, you've yet to cast your procedural vote on subsection 42 Delta concerning nap pod tax zoning. Quibbleton blinked slowly. His jowls wobbled as he sighed. Abstain for the love of the Nexus, he muttered, and waved a hand lazily. His assistant recorded the motion, and with that, the Galactic Empire's 3,000th year of peace ticked forward like a rusted gear slipping past one more tooth. They didn't call it peace because everything was perfect. No, peace was simply the Empire's talent for ignoring things, particularly unpleasant things. The harmonized species protocol ensured that any species too loud, too aggressive, too emotional, or too human was assigned a classification. Humanity, for example, was Category D. Semi-sapient enthusiasts of chaos, officially labeled a protected primitive species. Not dangerous, just unpredictable, not worth conquering, trading with, or bothering. The Empire considered them the cosmic equivalent of a toddler with a screwdriver near a wall socket, amusing, if not entirely safe. That was until Earth went silent. No trade signals, no social chatter, no Terran memes leaking into the outer fringe networks, no pirate broadcasts from Mars, not even the usual Terran operatic drama feeds featuring space plumbers and aggressively flirty death cults. Just silence, for 3 full days. On the 4th day, the scream came. It was not literal, though some species heard it that way. What broadcast across the galaxy at precisely 0600 UTC was a single, universal message packet that pierced every firewall, every frequency band, every data lattice. The face of a human, calm, focused, male, mid-40s, with flecks of gray in his hair and a cut across his brow, stared into the camera. His voice didn't rise. His face didn't contort. That somehow made it worse. This message is directed to the Galactic Empire. A pause. Then, you have taken our children. Silence. You will return them. You will offer a formal apology. You will provide reparations, voluntarily or by force. The man leaned forward, just slightly. You have 3 days. The message ended. Ambassador Quibbleton dropped his pen. This has to be a prank, he muttered, adjusting the folds of his ceremonial sash. His assistant, a pale Glinthian with 4 data tethers protruding from her skull, whispered nervously, No, sir. It originated from Earth's diplomatic network. The encryption was human military grade. Military? Quibbleton frowned. But humans don't have a military. They do now, sir. For the first time in a millennium, the Galactic Chamber paused a vote. An hour later, a hastily convened emergency session was formed. The Grand Executor of Trade refused to leave his spa bubble. The Silarxi delegates tried to frame it as a cultural misunderstanding, and the Krill ambassador started twitching when someone mentioned the word reprisal. But it was Director Malvek of the Observation Bureau who finally delivered the knife. He stood at the center of the chamber, his spindly claws tapping on the datapad before him. We have confirmation, he said. 2 standard cycles ago, a Zarnathi-affiliated black market vessel intercepted a colony ship in the Oort Cloud. It was a rogue operation, unaffiliated with core policy. He didn't finish. He didn't have to. Quibbleton's throat dried as realization clicked into place. They took children? 3 dozen, Malvek confirmed. A boarding error, they claimed. The vessel's AI misidentified the ship as abandoned. By the time they realized the truth, it was too late. The human colonists were placed into cryo. The children, Director, were they returned? No. A sound rippled across the chamber. Not a murmur, not a shout. A stillness. Everyone understood, even if they pretended they didn't. You could inconvenience humans. You could insult them. Hell, you could embargo their chocolate, but never touch their young. That's when Quibbleton made his second mistake of the day. He said, Perhaps we can settle this diplomatically. A side door of the chamber opened. 6 Imperial guards rushed in, visibly panicked. One of them was clutching a device. "We intercepted this 15 minutes ago," the guard said, handing it to Malvek. Malvek plugged it into his arm port. A hologram flared to life in the center of the room. This time, the message was different. It showed Earth, not its cities, but its shipyards. And what the galaxy saw was unlike anything ever classified in the harmonized archives. 1,000 vessels, some old, some new, all bristling with weapons, bracing with armor plating that shimmered with plasma-dampening layers. Interlocked fleets of Mars-forged war carriers and asteroid-borne stealth ships began forming into tight formations, like wolves circling a hunt. Humanity, it seemed, had not been idle in their protected status. And then came the voice again. Same man, same tone. "You ignored our requests. You underestimated our resolve." Pause. "You have 2 days left." The message cut to black. This time, Ambassador Quibbleton didn't reach for his pen. He reached for the emergency comms to the inner council. Director Malvek looked around the chamber. 3,000 years of peace, he whispered, all undone by one act of stupidity. "Correction," said the Glinthian assistant, her voice shaking. "One act and one response." Quibbleton slumped into his seat, fingers trembling. "Oh gods, they're not bluffing." The chamber lights flickered. For the first time in remembered galactic history, the Empire had something it had not needed in a millennium. A countdown. To war. It began, as most Terran wars do, not with a declaration, but with a list. In the silent corners of the galaxy, far from the glimmering diplomatic halls and the sycophantic lounges of galactic core elites, Earth transmitted a second message. No threats, no countdown, just names. 36 of them, each one accompanied by a photograph, a smiling face, a blurry family picture, a birthday party, a piano recital, a sandcastle on some orbital moon beach, all human children, all missing. Below each, the coordinates of where they were last seen and the last confirmed communication timestamp. It wasn't a warning. It was a memorial. But every sentient species who saw the list, and thanks to Earth's adaptive signal beaconing, everyone saw it, understood it for what it truly was, a manifesto of vengeance. Some species, like the Creelty, who once considered humans comically fragile, took one look at the footage and canceled every Earth survey mission. The Zarnathi, whose rogue traders had accidentally taken the children in the first place, filed for galactic asylum. None was granted. None mattered, because by then, Earth's skies were already empty. Not quiet, not still, just empty. Every docked Terran ship had launched, every reserve crew called up, civilian cargo freighters reclassified as combat support units, deep space mining colonies transmitting encrypted fleet coordination codes, planetary defense satellites flipped from passive monitoring to full planetary lock-on synchronization. The message wasn't subtle. Humanity wasn't reacting. They were executing. "Why didn't we see this coming?" hissed Counselor Viri of the Solari, her frilled gill plumes pulsing with panic. They were a joke. Their top export was banana-shaped inflatable chairs. Director Malvek, older than 3 emperors and twice as tired, stared at a projection of Earth's mobilization curve. "It was always there," he said quietly. "What was?" demanded Quibbleton, who now hadn't slept in 26 hours and looked like a half-deflated ceremonial balloon. "The pattern," Malvek muttered, tapping on the datapad. "History. Every time humanity is pushed beyond reason, beyond negotiation, there is a moment when they stop asking why and start asking where. Where are they? Where is the enemy? Where do we aim? They stopped being afraid the moment we gave them a target." He looked up. "And now we are that target." On the 3rd day, the children were found, or rather, what remained of them. Only 7 were alive, cryo-preserved, confused, terrified, but safe. The others had died in transport or from exposure due to failing containment units. The Zarnathi pirates had dumped them when they realized they'd been carrying high-value diplomatic hostages, and they'd left the bodies floating in space. When the footage reached Earth, it didn't trigger whales, it didn't bring speeches, no black and white flag filters, No candlelight vigils, only silence. And then, movement. The Terran response came 27 minutes later. 1 Zarnathi trading moon. Population 42,000. Gone. No civilian casualties, because there were no survivors at all. The entire moon was surgically evacuated of every biological entity before being encased in a stasis field and launched into a red dwarf star. It wasn't just war, it was precision fury. Then came the fleets. Admiral Noah Kim stood aboard the bridge of the TSS Relentless Resolve, her posture as composed as if she were presiding over a tea ceremony. Her eyes swept across the holographic projections of enemy positions. Vex Imperium fleet detected at Sector 17. 17 capital ships. Defensive net active. Orders, ma'am? She blinked once. Send our scouts. Tell them not to fire. Just sing. The officers exchanged glances. They'd heard rumors. The new Terran Psychological Warfare Division had been testing something called Echo Doctrine, but no one had seen it deployed. Until now. 5 Terran scout ships approached the Vex fleet. They didn't jam communications. They broadcasted. Children's laughter, playground rhymes, the sound of rain, and one quiet voice repeating, "You hurt the innocent. You don't get to speak anymore." The Vex ships panicked. 4 retreated. The rest opened fire on nothing, phantoms generated by Earth's signal arrays. 1 hour later, all 17 were floating metal husks. Earth hadn't even fired a shot. Back at the Galactic Council, chaos reigned. "You have to talk to them," shouted the jerk's representative. "We need to de-escalate," Quibbleton snapped. "Talk. They sent us the names of dead children and burned a pirate colony into plasma. They're not listening. They're teaching." He slammed a trembling hand on the table. "They warned us. We ignored them. They mourned. We called it dramatic. And now they're moving like a single fist, and every knuckle is sharpened by grief and resolve." Malvek nodded grimly. "You know why it's so terrifying?" he said softly. "Because they're not even angry anymore." Silence. They're focused. Meanwhile, Earth transmitted one final message. Just 4 words. "Return what remains. Now." The Empire complied. Even the most arrogant corners of the galactic map understood. Delay was not an option. They didn't ask what would happen if they refused. They didn't want to know. The star map bled red. Not metaphorically, literally. A sprawling neural web display inside Earth's Strategic Combat Archive painted every system affiliated with the Vex Imperium in crimson. Civilian? Military? Didn't matter. The distinction had been erased the moment their empire looked at human children and saw bargaining chips. And somewhere, in orbit over a dying Vex moon, a poet-turned-fleet commander named Mason Kale stood at the observation deck of the TSS Penumbra. He didn't speak much. Didn't bark orders like the old Earth War films used to show. But his eyes had the look of someone who'd read every casualty report twice and memorized the names. "We don't need to flatten them," his lieutenant said. "We've already crippled 4 supply chains, rerouted all their logistics, collapsed their entire black market trade." Kale turned slowly. "Are the broadcasts still running?" "Yes, sir. All across known space. Every embassy. Every news stream." "Good," Kale replied. "Let them watch what consequences look like." Back at the galactic core, the media was calling it the reckoning of Earth. The Vex called it an overreaction. But no one listened to the Vex anymore. Because, as the systems burned, something even more horrifying unfolded. Humanity began evacuating civilians. Not theirs. Theirs. On every targeted moon, station, or planet, Earth's forces dropped warning beacons 24 hours ahead of any strike. These beacons did not contain threats. They contained instructions, evacuation corridors, escape shuttle rendezvous points, coordinates for safe neutral zones run by human NGOs. Yes, humanity had already prepared refugee aid for their enemies' civilians, and that's when the galaxy finally understood. This wasn't bloodlust, it was doctrine. Director Okonkwo stood in front of the Emergency Council Assembly, her voice low, composed, almost eerily calm. "This isn't just retaliation, this is strategic morality," she said. "They aren't destroying the Vex. They're dismantling them, ethically, visibly, purposefully." She tapped her datapad, and a holofeed shimmered to life. Footage of Vex warlords being arrested by their own people. Civil uprisings supported by Terran drones, not with weapons, but with supply drops and medical tents. "They're waging war on an empire," she said, "and building a better one in the rubble as they go." The Ethrix diplomat blinked all four eyes. "But isn't that worse?" No one answered, because deep down they all feared the same truth. Earth wasn't just winning, they were replacing. On a dusty mining world named Korth 7, long enslaved by the Vex for rare mineral extraction, a miracle occurred. Human medics showed up before the soldiers. They brought translators, and thermal blankets, and food engineered to suit Korthian biology. The locals, 12-foot insectoid beings, stood paralyzed in confusion as an Earth nurse handed them protein packs. "Where's the shock collar remote?" one of the Korthians rasped. The medic looked up, brows furrowing. "We don't do that." "You're here to help?" "Sort of," she shrugged. "We're here to replace what hurt you." And just like that, the Korthians pledged loyalty, not to Earth, but to what Earth stood for. The Vex Imperium began to crumble. Its central government fractured in under 6 days. Regional governors begged for clemency. Entire fleets deserted. And amidst the chaos, whispers spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Earth isn't just avenging its own. They're cleansing the stars. And deep inside one fortified citadel, Supreme Marshal Verthok of the Vex watched the footage of his strongest fortress being overtaken by medics and engineers. Not bombs, not nukes, engineers. He slammed a clawed fist on the table. "They're tearing down our legacy without firing a shot." "No, sir," whispered his adjutant. "They're firing plenty. They just clean up after." Meanwhile, in Earth's United Military Command, a meeting was underway. "Status?" asked General Said, glancing over the data wall. "Our strike teams have dismantled 73% of the Vex forward bases. No civilian casualties logged. 3 new systems now requesting Terran stewardship." Said frowned. "We're not here to colonize." "No, sir," the aide replied. "They're asking." Said exhaled slowly. He looked around the room, filled with human leaders who, 2 weeks ago, were engineers, translators, peacekeepers. None of them wanted this war. None of them reveled in it. But now they were architects of consequence. He stood. "Then we do what we came for. We retrieve what's ours. We teach them what justice means, and we leave the rest for the historians to explain." On the 10th day of the war, Earth's final transmission went live. A soft voice, no music, just still images of the lost children, one by one. And then, this message: "We are done asking for peace. We will now build it, ourselves." The Galactic Assembly Hall had never been this quiet. Not during budget meetings, not during planetary crises, not even during the infamous Octurian sauce trade dispute, which nearly triggered civil war over condiments. But now the silence felt earned. On the main holoscreen hovered a live feed from orbit above the Vex homeworld. The atmosphere shimmered with thousands of Terran vessels, none firing, none posturing, just waiting. Ambassador Quibbleton adjusted his collar, his round glasses fogged with the condensation of raw anxiety. "Why haven't they struck yet?" asked one of the Nargle representatives, fidgeting with a cluster of their neck tendrils. Quibbleton's voice was tired. "Because Earth doesn't need to." The planet below was in revolt. The Vex government had collapsed on itself, its leaders abandoned, its soldiers defecting, its slaves rising. Every broadcast tower had been overridden by Earth's relay signal. Not propaganda, proof of crimes, proof of cover-ups, proof of children, chained and experimented on, and worse, sold to buyers. And beside each horror, Earth placed an answer. This is why. No speeches, no theatrics, just evidence and consequence. The Vex Imperium hadn't been invaded. It had been unmasked. On Earth, no one celebrated, not publicly. There were no fireworks, no flags waved. The faces of the missing children still glowed from every corner of the planet. Some had been found, many had not. But the war wasn't for celebration, it was for them. And in a quiet room in Nairobi, the original mother who had sent the first report, who'd been dismissed, ignored, ridiculed, sat holding the hand of her returned daughter. "They listened, Mama," the girl whispered. Her mother nodded, tears silent. "They always do, just not always in time." In the assembly, Director Okonkwo addressed the chamber with a cold, precise gravity. "You all called Earth emotional, reactive, unpredictable," she said. Her tone never rose. "You said our passion made us dangerous, that our empathy was a flaw." The chamber stared. "You were half right." A pause. "But what you never understood was this: our love for peace has limits, and we've reached them." Behind her, a holomap rotated. Every former Vex colony now declared open territory, governed by local populations with Terran legal oversight only until new democratic systems could be built. "Earth does not seek conquest," Okonkwo said. "We seek closure and peace, built not on bureaucracy, but on truth." On the Vex homeworld, Marshal Verthok, bloodied and limping, approached the landing site of the Terran delegation. They hadn't come in military armor. They wore diplomatic black. Verthok dropped to one knee. "I surrender." The Terran official didn't speak. He placed a photo on the ground. A child, Vex-marked, bruised, stolen. "Her name was Anya," the human said quietly. "She didn't survive. Your scientists thought she would last longer. They were wrong." Verthok's mandibles twitched. "I didn't order. Don't care." The Terran handed him a data pad. "These are the names of your scientists. We've already retrieved half. You'll hand over the rest, or we start again." Verthok opened his mouth, but he didn't speak, because he understood something, finally. This wasn't diplomacy. This was a verdict. The galaxy watched as Earth dismantled the remains of the Imperium piece by piece, not with cruelty, but with unforgiving precision. Every war crime logged, every victim's name recorded, every oppressor tried in open court, broadcast live. And then something wild began to happen. Other empires began opening their records. Species once too afraid to challenge the Vex now filed legal grievances with Earth as their proxy. Forgotten slave worlds flew Terran flags not as conquered systems, but as protected wards. A new alliance formed, the Accord of Witness. Earth was no longer a planet, it was a precedent. In the days that followed, debate raged in the galactic media. Had Earth gone too far? Was this new alliance just another empire in disguise? But as hundreds of Vex prisoners were returned to their former captives to face trial, and as peacekeeping aid flowed to once impoverished systems, an undeniable truth settled across the stars. Earth had redrawn the map, not by force, but by reputation, and in the ruins of the old order, something rare took root: respect. Back in the assembly, Okonkwo stood once more. "The peace you built was silence," she said. "We are not silent." She raised her hand and snapped her fingers. Behind her, a banner unfurled, not of Earth, of every species who'd been ignored, trampled, overlooked. "We speak now," she said, "together." A pause. "And if you ever take our children again—" The lights dimmed. A second banner unfurled, black, embroidered with red stars, the emblem of the Accord fleet. "We will stop being civilized." There is a kind of silence that follows thunder. It's not peace, it's not fear, it's respect, laced with the memory of something that could have destroyed you, but didn't. That was the silence that fell over the galaxy in the days after Earth's war. Not just because the Vex Imperium was gone, not just because Earth had demonstrated power, but because Earth had walked away when it could have stayed. In the old Imperial records, what was left of them, the humans were once categorized as probationary primitives, a box checked during trade evaluations, a note in the margins of diplomatic reports. But now, in every station, port, and broadcast channel, a new label began appearing. Caution, human jurisdiction, enforced by Accord Treaty. To the rich, it meant their illegal trades and silenced systems were no longer safe. To the poor, it meant, finally, someone might listen. And to the predators, it meant the prey had teeth. In a once slave world orbiting the star Relethish, a former Vex auction site was converted into a courthouse. Rows of former slaves, now citizens, gathered to testify. The first case was simple: a scientist who had overseen experiments on children from Earth and elsewhere. When the human-appointed arbiter asked if the witness wanted revenge, she shook her head. "No," she said. "I want him to hear the truth and live with it." The sentence was passed: lifetime labor in rebuilding the world he had helped destroy. No death, no spectacle, just accountability. And somehow, that was worse. Ambassador Quibbleton stood at the edge of the Assembly's reflection gallery, sipping tea brewed from Earth's highland gardens, now the most requested luxury export in 12 sectors. He stared at the monument being built across the gallery's skyline, a statue of a Terran mother holding the hand of a child, not her own. Beside her, an alien parent did the same. Above them, the words were etched in 47 languages: "Never again with silence." Behind him, footsteps. "Director Okonkwo," he said without turning, "I imagine you didn't come to admire the view." She stood beside him, her face unreadable. "We're leaving the assembly," she said. Quibbleton blinked. "Permanently?" "Just symbolically," she said. "We'll stay in contact, but Earth's voice will now echo through the accord." He frowned. "And what of diplomacy?" She looked out the window. "Diplomacy," she said, "is what you do before you know who your real allies are." Across the stars, the accord grew. Not an empire, a union. Worlds once ignored found protection. Languages once suppressed were taught again. Schools opened where minds had stood. And children, all children, walked without fear under skies once ruled by invaders. But humans remained unpredictable. They built hospitals faster than fleets. They turned former warships into relief carriers. And they sent comedians, poets, and schoolteachers in droves before the politicians arrived. As one alien commentator put it, they do not conquer with fire, they invade with culture, food, and sarcasm. And every time a human ship entered orbit, one question echoed in every station: are they angry, or are they here to help? The answer? Yes. On Earth, in a garden in the Andes, a child who had once been taken now painted beside her friends, some from Earth, some not. A Vex child, adopted and re-educated, asked her one day, "Why didn't they just destroy us?" She paused. "Because they're human." The Vex child blinked. "That doesn't mean anything to me yet." She grinned. "It will." In the last meeting of the year, the new assembly, rebuilt, diverse, and cautious, invited Earth to speak. Okonkwo did not attend. Instead, they sent a schoolteacher named Derek Malone, chosen by lottery from the global registry. He wore jeans, drank from a reusable water bottle, brought snacks. When the assembly expected grand speeches, he pulled out a projector and showed pictures drawn by children from liberated worlds. A purple-skinned boy had drawn a human soldier with a flower. A girl from Earth had drawn stars with tiny homes on them labeled "Friends." When asked for his closing statement, Malone shrugged. "I don't really do speeches," he said. "But I know this. If you ever take our kids again, we'll come back. And we won't just bring soldiers." A pause. "We'll bring teachers." The galaxy never forgot. Not because of the violence, not because of the vengeance, but because Earth showed the stars what happens when morality stops being a committee discussion and starts being a promise. Humanity didn't break peace. They redefined it.